about Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida.
Stephen A. Smith has called out MAGA Republican Ron DeSantis once again.
This is about sports because he's talking about setting aside $1 million in the state budget for any potential litigation coming down the pike to sue the NCAA or to sue somebody.
This is true. DeSantis said as much.
Now, people have said, is there anything you can do? They're actually looking to see, is there anything they can do? I don't know if there is any recourse, but I have set aside $1 million in case there ever is any litigation.
And rightfully, this should enrage many. For context, Florida State was left out of the college football playoff even after going undefeated in a Power 5 conference. It was unprecedented.
First of all, sir, don't you have bigger priorities? I mean, you're trailing Donald Trump by about 59 points in the polls. The man ain't even show up to debate you because he considers you that insignificant. Don't you have bigger problems? Don't you have bigger problems? I mean, thank the good Lord that you ain't trying to alter the education system by talking to us about how there were good elements of slavery.
This is also true.
Yesterday, the Florida Board of Education approved new standards for Black history instruction that require lessons for middle schoolers to include, quote, how slaves develop skills, which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. The old racist trope from the 1850s that slavery benefited the enslaved seems to have been resurrected in Florida. And middle schoolers in that state may be required to learn it.
Woke ideology, woke executives.
Florida is where woke goes to die.
But let me tell you something right now. Fighting the school system 1 minute, fighting amusement parks another. The list goes on and on.
Then Smith hits the awkward DeSantis with this line on his show.
This is not your lane. First of all, this isn't the first time a college football program institution has gotten screwed over. Ask TCU. Ask Ohio State. Ask Baylor. Ask Central Florida from years ago. Didn't hear you talking about them at that time in 2017.
Smith then proceeds to put a bow on his rant against Florida's governor.
Let me educate you about something, Ron DeSantis, because I think you need my help, and I'm here to help you. Very astute governor. Don't like some of your policies, but there's no doubt you know what the hell you're talking about, and you are no dummy. Highly accomplished individual, not here to disrespect you, sir. But you could use a little help when it comes to knowing how to appeal to a nationally televised audience. Perhaps if you did that, you'd be higher in the polls. And the fact that you struggle with that sort of dilutes your argument on behalf of Florida State, because what you're not paying attention to is the problems that TCU's annihilation in the national championship game that Georgia caused. The committee didn't want to see a part 2 of that. The networks didn't want to see a part 2 of that. Nobody wants to see Florida State going into the college football playoffs with someone other than their star quarterback and struggling to score points.
So what is the story here? He ripped the College Football Playoff Committee's decision to leave the Florida State Seminoles out. Thus, he is asking for $1 million of the state budget, the people's budget, to sue the committee. At a press conference, this dude would double down on his efforts. What we decided to do, we're setting aside $1 million for any litigation expenses that may become as a result of this really, really poor decision by the college football playoffs to exclude an undefeated team who won a big Power 5 conference championship. He has the backing of Chief Financial Officer Jimmy Petronas via TampaBay.com, who said in a letter to Selection Committee Chairperson Boo Corrigan that he would have no problem cutting those checks. Petronas asked for more transparency from the committee and said the choice affected FSU's ability to recruit players and comprise millions of dollars in an economic output to FSU, the community, and players through name, image, and likeness deals. Guess who else decided to weigh in on all of this? And it is a familiar name because, in that state at least, he held the same position that Ron DeSantis does now. That would be Senator Rick Scott. He's demanding that members of the College Football Playoff Committee turn over texts, emails, and notes related to its decision to exclude FSU. Scott, in a letter to Corrigan, demanded total transparency from the committee. regarding how the decision was reached and what factors may have been put in play. He wants all emails, texts, and other written communications exchanged between members of the selection committee about its college football playoff selections, including communications exchange with college football playoff company officers and board members. Shockingly, I am all for this, just not for the reasons that they have. They're doing it to score cheap political points amongst a, rightfully so, hypersensitive fan base right now that feels like they were wronged. That's all that this is. Do they really care about the college football playoff committee? Do you think that if Alabama were to be left out, that Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis would be doing this? Of course not. Of course not. Now, I have two takeaways. The first is, what happened to keeping politics out of sports, guys? Come on, buddies. You can't even run with your own consistencies. And that is why we deem what you guys say extremely hypocritical. Ron DeSantis, the man who thinks that politics don't belong in sports, the same guy who withheld funding because from a facility that the Rays were building because they decided to tweet after massacre, the statistics that we all know of gun violence in America. Ron DeSantis, the same guy who says keep politics out of sports, holds a press conference, I believe at the Tampa Bay Bucks' facility with Tony Dungy. Same dude. Incredible. The second is, you are essentially, if this goes through, which I believe it will because of how badly they have gerrymandered this entire state, that they are now going to essentially hold hostage $1 million when that could be used where Florida, just as an example, I know I used to live in California, but as an example, they have the third highest rate of homelessness. How about putting that $1 million into feeding the homeless, housing the homeless, building infrastructure? But no, let's do it to score cheap political points with the fan base, of which there are many, for the Florida State Seminoles. Atrocious, hypocritical, dumb, wasteful.